What's our next question? Hey, someone who's also here. Wizards, many years ago, in trying to come up with a creative theme for a campaign, we would ask clients about their unique selling propositions. Oof. And what made them different from their competitors. Usually the answers we would get didn't yield much. It's because there's no such thing. Uh, substantial content or item to hinge a campaign on. These days, we ask clients less about what differentiates them and more about who they are as a company in order to find out why people would like them and choose to buy from them so we can create their strategy for their campaign. Correct.
Mhm.
Do you believe that getting people to like a business is more important than what differentiates them from competitors? Yes.
Absolutely.
Full stop. What kinds of questions would you just, okay, to find out why someone's a kind. Chris, I would say the same kinds of questions that if anybody was interviewing them. You want to watch one of the best interviewers on the damn planet? It's what's his name from Hot Ones on YouTube. He's got a YouTube station where people eat increasingly hot wings while being interviewed by him, and he's managed to get like Brad Pitt and George Clooney, and like he's getting all these big dogs, and he's maybe one of the best interviewers currently functioning in the space. There's not a single question to ask that always consistently gets the best honest answers from people. So, as much as I hate to say it, it's the same as hanging out with anybody. You got to figure out what's this person's vibe and what kind of things do they like to talk about. Strangely, if you can get in the same room and it's their space, look around you and see what they hang on their walls and what they mount on their desk and ask some questions that have nothing to do with work at first, right? And then like when you first sit down and you're like setting your stuff up and you're like, oh, I see you got that. What is that all about?
And some people will recognize that as an old cliched, like Dale Carnegie kind of sales approach, but you're not trying to sell them at this point. You're trying to find out what makes them tick. So, Chris, what's the deal with those cowboy hats?
Yeah, for you, for example, why do you have a pile of what looks like cartoon hats over your left shoulder?
Right? There's a story there. I don't know what it is.
No. I mean, I want to know the answer.
You wanna know?
I want you to unmute and answer that question.
It's a collection of hats that have formed over several years. So I don't think I even purchased one of them. They've all been event gifts or what have you, but that's where they go.
I'm Chris, and people like me so much, they give me hats.
Yeah. Like most people collect badges from their events and like merch bags, but you collect red cowboy hats.
I didn't set out to collect hats, but I have a lot of hats now, right? And it's like, oh, this is all of a sudden kind of interesting. And you want to know more, and you feel like I like Chris because people give him hats.
Yeah.
I want to hang out with him and find out why people. I want to see it happen sometime.
Yeah.
Right. So the thing is, be curious, and it's not so much what questions to ask as just keep asking them. Your curiosity when they say, well, back when I got into this, why did you get into this business? What made you get into this business? Well, I didn't, and that's where you find really interesting stuff. Daniel works with Iron Root Whiskey, and
the distillery in North Texas.
And it turned, they're just like, oh, we're a family, we make whiskey, and then you start digging deeper, and you find out like, no, these guys made some serious sacrifices. They've got like seriously deep backstory, and that's the story that makes you love them.
Yeah, so, one of the biggest stories was the youngest brother sat down at Christmas meal and announced to the family after 7 years of school, he didn't want to be a lawyer.
Quitting law school.
I'm quitting law school 3 months before he graduated. And they were like, oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So what are we? And he was like, I want to start a distillery.
And I want to work with my family.
What?
Yeah.
But 3 months later, they were in Kentucky researching distilleries and trying to understand what it would take to do something like this.
And some business owners might say to you as you ask these questions, like, well, why do you need to know that? We make whiskey.
Yeah, well,
let's talk about the whiskey. No, let's talk about the people making the whiskey.
If I was doing radio ads for Iron Root, which we're not going to do anytime soon, I would love to end every ad with Robert going in the background, I could have been a lawyer.
Could have been a lawyer. Jeez.
Right, but you would never know that except for I sat down and I heard that story after pushing and asking. If you sit down with somebody for 30 minutes, you should talk for less than 2.
Get them talking. Make sure you've got enough time, right? And if you can, take them to a meal. but try to spend more time than you would in a typical sales call.
Yeah, and
You'll never find it.
that meeting should never be about what packages you offer, what you can do, what you would hope to do,
Yeah.
what you've seen. It's literally just let's talk, hang out. That was a great lunch. I'll call you next week with some plans.
They're always going to have their guard up because you're in a position to sell them as well. Like they haven't just hired you to write this. You're trying to get them to commit to something as well. So there's always going to be a little bit of holding back from these people, from a client. If you're, I assume, Chris, you're in radio and you're selling this client.
Yeah.
And so I was in your shoes, and one of the most frustrating parts was the only tool I had was radio ads. And you're trying to pull information out of people so that we can make the audience like them, but they always have this little wall up worried about what you're trying to sell them.
I do. My least favorite thing is when someone I don't know sits down with me and they're like, so,
Yeah.
what makes you tick? And my
Yeah.
first instinct is, fuck you.
What are you trying to sell me?
I don't owe you anything. Yeah, nothing. And I'll give trite answers like, so, what got you into whiskey? And my first response will be, I like whiskey.
There you go.
Because I don't want to have this conversation. But if you can go and eventually they'll ask a question, I'll be like, look, fine, here's what actually happened. And I'll finally crack. So it's not easy. Wear the red hat. That will probably, the red cowboy hat, that will probably help.
If the business owner is willing to do a little homework and help you,
Yeah.
tell them, look, start asking people right before they walk out the door. Hey, just one last question.
The Columbo.
What's your favorite part about doing business with us? Oh, I really like the location. I love that there's close parking. I love the way this person treated me, right? So they'll start telling you those things. And if they start collecting that data, it'll help them. And when they share it with you, it'll help you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they'll feel free to share that kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? Because that's bragging about their business, why people love them.
Sweet. Is that helpful? You good?
All good.
All right.
Okay.
Rock and roll.
Good seeing you.
This is way more fun than answering them to a blind camera because I get